You are listening to the 312 Squadron podcast. My name is Nick Sperry, and I am pleased to introduce Harry Nick.
Hello, how you going?
This is getting out of hand. Now there are two of them. It's
That's
a
right.
classic Phantom Menace meme of the many in the Phantom Menace. So many memes from the prequels, Nick. It's just ridiculous.
Such a good movie. Ooh, 10 out of 10.
Yeah. Well, I know some people who would actually think that, so fair enough.
It depends
now
how
most of
you rate a movie.
Yes, yeah, I mean, I do like Revenge of the Sith. I will say I'm actually a big fan of, personally, Revenge of the Sith, but my mom worked for Lucasfilm when I was a kid. So like Revenge of the Sith was like right before she left. So there's just kind of like a even closer attachment to that movie.
If you don't mind me asking, how old were you exactly when that came out?
Well, I'm not going to try to make you sound old or feel old when I say this, but I was, let's see, 2005. That was 19 years ago. So I'm 27 now. So I was 8 or 9, right?
Oh,
Am I doing the math right?
Oh, no, really?
Yeah. My parents
It's
shielded my eyes when
great
Anakin
age to get into Star
burned.
Wars, though. Great age.
Yeah. And that's why I think fundamentally people just think about Star Wars differently based on when they were introduced to them.
Oh, man, I was older than that when they got re-released in the cinemas in the late 90s.
You look great, though. You can't be, a day over 28, my friend.
Thank you. Let's
You're
go
welcome.
with that.
Yeah, and we'll continue with our little brief introduction. Most people know you, Nick, from just YouTube, X-Wing, other tabletop games, but I've always thought of you as, and you might describe yourself as this, as an X-Wing or a YouTuber in some ways. How would you describe your channel and what you did before you took your break and now you're back?
I think the tagline I have on YouTube is the world's most talented amateur X-Wing player. Which I like. I've always felt myself as a sort of a casual player, and I never went into the YouTube channel specifically wanting to make X-Wing content. That was the catalyst for me making the channel in the first place. But it was always meant to be a side channel for me to just do whatever I wanted to do separately. I actually had a separate channel where I was doing Let's Plays with a mate of mine, which never took off, but. Just bit of a tip for everyone. If you want to make a YouTube channel, focus on doing something that actually engages you. Make the content you want to make. Because the second I did that, people started watching big time. Sorry,
Good.
I lost my train of thought. What was the question?
No. I mean, you said I'd like to describe myself as the world's most talented amateur X-Wing player.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
That probably partially at least answered the question. So
Yeah,
it's okay.
just dumb hot takes from a casual that loves to think way too much about gaming. That's me.
Yeah, and now is a really interesting time for the games that you cover and that we kind of both follow. I'm first and foremost an X-Wing player, and but I keep my eyes open, and we'll talk about what we've just heard about with Legion, and of course the recent news with X-Wing, and it's a really interesting time to be like a content creator for these games as they're shifting. Development is ending. A lot of question marks around tabletop gaming, especially for Star Wars and just the future of things. And so, I think really I'll ask you a bunch of questions. We'll hash it out. But, how do you feel about the current state of things as the dust starts to
specifically
settle for
X-Wing
and X-Wing and beyond, really? You can start with X-Wing, though.
Better than I have in the last couple of years, put it that way. I just haven't felt great about the game in general. Having said that, the last major tournament I played was the Australian Nationals in 2022. That was 2.5. I think it was 2 or 3 months into that rule set being implemented, and I loved it. I think X-Wing, even with the worst rule set it's ever had, in my opinion, it's still the core loop of the game is still amazing. And I think people sort of maybe tend to overblow things and forget that.
The fundamentals of X-Wing have stayed, yeah, for sure.
And look, I've said my piece on AMG on my own channel. I don't want to get too caught up with the negativity again. But I have not felt that the game has been handled that well. Not for a long time, but specifically in the last couple of years. I just haven't felt great about it. Felt great about the X-Wing community as a whole. Every time I've engaged with them, just going out, playing tournaments, chatting to people, that's always been a super positive experience. But, from top down, it hasn't felt that great. So the fact
Sure.
that, let's be real, that one major factor that was causing that is stepping away from X-Wing, and it's going to the community, which, as I just said, is what I feel has been the most positive force in X-Wing for a while now. Yeah, I feel good. I feel really good.
Yeah, it's exciting. I feel
Mm,
there's a lot of excitement. And being a part of just on the X-Wing Alliance side, it's clear that a lot of people are like, I mean, we have literal press releases that we are, that I'm releasing for folks, and they're like, oh
mm,
my gosh, this is more in 2 weeks than I feel like we've gotten from Atomic Mass Games, and I'm right there with you when it comes to really
mm.
ragging on AMG. I mean, we'll talk about Atomic Mass Games a little bit, but I'm tired and fatigued from it as well. I think it's just
We've
it
both had our rants at this stage, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And they were
and
great.
it's yeah, yeah, the beginning of 2.5, that rule set was tough. I actually opted out of playing at Adepticon and judged instead because I
Mm.
was really concerned with just how little fun I was going to have playing.
That's an interesting point. You just said because of a rule set you chose to judge instead. Wouldn't that be an even worse experience?
Well, I wanted to be around everybody. Yeah, no. I wanted to be around. I knew everybody there pretty much. Dion,
Okay.
I've been a part of GSP, and GSP was putting that vent on, so I
Okay.
wanted to be there to help Dion. And yeah, but it's a great point. It's like, what,
I guess
wouldn't that
being a
be
judge, you
worse?
get to interact with more people. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Okay, cool. Yeah.
yeah, and I get to see people lose their games in turn one because in the original rule set you could take
Mm.
objectives in the first turn. So it was yeah, it's amazing how far we've come from, that first rule set where I think it was a bit of a rough landing to kind of improvement, and then dipping into a valley again, and then staying in that valley just long enough for AMG to be like, this isn't going to work. We got to walk away.
Well, I think
And here we
I
are.
would argue that was all planned, but anyway, let's not get into that.
Sure. Yeah. No problem. And I think it's important that what's nice, I was having this conversation with a good friend of mine, another X-Wing player, about how this world that we're in now, this era, this chapter, whatever you want to call it, there's a little bit less chastising for people being honest and open and of course civil about how they feel about things. I
Big
feel
time.
like so having this conversation where you're just bringing up like I think it was planned all along. I feel like 8 months ago people would attack you for that.
Big
Now it's
time.
just like probably maybe, and people are like willing to just have that chat, and I think that's nice because that whole click thing was a bummer. It's just I don't
I
know.
guess people sort of fall into the trap of feeling like when they're inciting anger within the community, it hurts the game overall, or it hurts the company's perception of the community or whatever. And I definitely felt like I was doing this at the start of 2.5. Just to reiterate a lot of my thoughts back then, I like a lot of 2.5. Like I don't think it's I think it's I rate it like at a 75%, where like 2.0, 1.0 was like over 90% in terms of what I think is just in terms of like design quality. And where was I going with this?
No, yeah. I think we're just talking about just be opening up about how you feel
Oh,
and
yeah,
not
yeah,
feel
yeah.
like you're chastised
There
for it.
definitely was a feeling for me when I was talking about that kind of stuff that I didn't want to say the sky was falling because I don't want to, hurt the thing that I spend my time talking about, kind of thing. I still felt like I was honest, but I felt like there was an incentive for me to be diplomatic. I still think there is, but because there's not like a company, like a big faceless corporation that we don't really have that great communication with, I don't feel that right now because hey, literally the people who are going to be taking over, I'm talking to right now, and I felt like
Yeah.
it's just a lot more honesty going on. I just feel a lot less, self conscious about that kind of critique. And the same is true as well of the transition from 1.0 2.0. This is not just about 2.5. I'm having a lot of great conversations or just seeing a lot of great comments on my videos from people who are critical of 2.0. And it's like you said, suddenly everything is a lot more civil. There was a lot of salt at the start of second edition, but the people talking about it now, like, um, it's not just like, oh, I have to spend this much money to upgrade. It was also talking about not having a group engaged enough to want to stay with that, or their
Hmm.
country's distribution couldn't handle that. And I'm seeing a lot of these conversations happen, and it's calmer. We're actually learning a lot from each other now, which is fantastic. And just all these people that still play first edition. I'm getting all these comments from, and it's awesome. It's really, really cool.
Wow, that's wild. I don't see a lot of that on my channel when it comes to people talking about 1.0. I feel like
Yeah.
there's just kind of like it's like we leave that in the past kind of vibe just because towards the end of 1.0 with
Yeah.
certain combos and stuff. I didn't personally play 1.0. I bought into 1.0 as 2.0 came out and switched over and bought even more.
It was awesome. It wasn't better than 2. Are you a Magic player by any chance? This is the best
I'm
metaphor I
not.
can.
I'm not a
Okay,
Magic player, but you can
so
still. There's a lot of people listening that are Magic players. So
it's I actually just a couple of days ago recorded a video with Justin. I'll be releasing it just before or after this video comes out, but we speak about 1.0. It's like vintage Magic because there's a lot of broken design from the early days of X-Wing development under FFG, where they didn't know what was powerful. They didn't know what was obviously broken to us now. Things like Push the Limit, Veteran Instinct, like just these cards that should never have been printed. But that's so easy to say with hindsight. Yeah, just great format. If you ever get a chance to just play it casually, give it a go.
I did play a couple games. Apartment Wing is what we called it, like with my roommate.
Yep.
But what was hard was it would take us like an hour to like get set up because we would be sifting through all these little cards, like not knowing what any of them were. And so I just like the mess of it all. And then 2.0 is like, oh, use a squad builder. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Well, we always
Like,
had squad builders. It's just if you didn't know, you
yeah,
didn't
I didn't
know.
know.
Yeah.
I didn't know exactly. I had no clue.
Even with the second edition squad builder, nobody actually used that squad builder. that was a clunky app.
It was. I can respect the fact that they felt like they kind of felt they needed to make something because there needed to be a way to be able to easily with the way, math, adding everything up with upgrades and everything, needed to be able to provide something. So I at least respect the initiative, but yeah, it never got off the ground. It was always bad.
It coincided with FFI. I don't know how much you know about this, but basically FFG, and this was early days when they were sort of joined up with Asmodee. You know how like Asmodee are like trying to separate companies out into their specialized way of making product, like AMG is the mini thing, FFG is the
Right.
board game company, that kind of thing. We know how that's turned out, but let's not go into that. But FFG, I don't know if this was decided before the merger with Asmodee, but they made a separate sort of in-house studio called FFI, Fantasy Flight Interactive, and they made a digitized version of the Lord of the Rings LCG. I don't know if that's still free on Steam, but basically, the whole venture collapsed. It just wasn't successful enough, and the first game they brought out just didn't sell that well. I actually did buy it; it's good fun, the Lord of the Rings game. But I think the app coincided with that, so they had that in-house development team, and because that fell apart, I don't think they had good long-term support for it, and
Yeah.
it never got much better, unfortunately.
Yeah, and then we ended up in this position where, AMG was kind of quietly just shepherding people to use the unofficial community squad builders, which are always optimized and a lot better. And
Yeah,
so if you were someone in my shoes, like when I first started playing X-Wing and I had no idea what to do, it can be challenging, like not knowing exactly where to go for resources. The internet is the internet, so you'll find out fast enough. But no,
yeah, especially now with like 1,000 Discord servers and stuff. Yeah,
just
yeah,
a few.
just a few.
I am in a lot. I
Yeah,
just a
we
lot.
each have one.
Being the We do. We do. The Knicks both have their own discords, and you so graciously joined mine, which was very nice of you. And it's our Discord server has exploded the last 90 days. It's been great, and
Indeed.
yours is open to everyone now as well. And it seems like yours is really lifting off as well with people joining.
Yeah, well, I closed my Patreon because I just had these massive gaps in content. I'm like, I can't. This isn't working. And
Yeah,
more to the point, I'm not gonna dump on Patreon too much. I realize that you rely on that for a revenue stream, so I don't want to hurt your efforts in that. But it just hasn't worked out for me in the way I want to do content, and I'm looking at different ways to potentially get another income from my content creation in the future. And I've got some plans coming soon, so watch out for that.
cool. Yeah. Of course. No, you're good. I don't think anyone's gonna be offended I'll be almost impressed if they leave Patreon because like, well, Nick mentioned, don't don't go on Patreon.
Specifically, join 312 Squadron Patreon. No,
Yeah.
no other Patreon.
Oh man, I want to, let's we as we said, we're not going to talk about AMG too much, but I have one more question related to
Yep.
AMG. The Legion changes recently. I don't know. I've watched some coverage on it. I know that they've essentially ratted a lot of cards and will reprint them later. They're changing the way player order is determined for games, all that stuff. In a nutshell, basically, in a very vague description of concise description of what I've understood. Do you feel like this is kind of a trend? AMG, people saying AMG is trying to adapt the games that they have ownership over to make it easier for them to understand. Is that kind of like a little too tinfoil cap to suggest that, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, like sort of bring it into their branding in a sort of like a more cynical way of looking at that. I don't know. There definitely does feel like with the way they changed X-wing, and if they actually did any real development on Armada, I imagine this would have happened to that as well. But you look at like the new branding, the graphic design they're putting on Legion, it's like, oh yeah, this looks like an AMG game now, which is fine. If they want to create brand cohesion, I have no problem with that. I actually just I'm sorry, the reason I was looking at this monitor over here and typing away. Shout out to the Winnest. I hope that's how we pronounce that.
Yeah,
A content creator who actually recently made a really great summary of what's happened to X-wing and Armada on his own channel, and talking about like how he's actually getting into the game now, which is really really cool. But he's a content creator that sort of covers Legion, and he spoke about this way more eloquently than I could. Not only because he's really good at sort of making good coherent videos, which I seem to struggle with. People seem to love the rambling, so I'm not going to stop. But also, he's a Legion player who's engaged with the game a lot more than I have. So I'm viewing Legion very much as an outsider. So I will say, for my part, I actually really like a lot of what's been announced. Some of the graphic design elements are a little bit weird to me. I don't like how keywording's been taken off the unit cards, but I really like the overall look of the unit cards now. When I was watching the announcement, I was watching a Crabox stream of it, and reading all the comments there while I was viewing how it was being announced. People were making the comment, "Oh, it looks like a trading card game now," and I'm like, "That's not a bad thing, because you know what trading cards are great at? Easy cohesion. You can read them from across the table very easily." And I agree, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I do wish there was keywording on the cards. Maybe they'll have separate cards with keywords. I think that's potentially what they're thinking of doing. Although they've not said that. That's just a random thought of mine. People are complaining that there's points and upgrades on the back because they want to be able to say it during game. But my response to that is, why do you need to say it during a game? You've got the squad building on the back and the in-game mechanics on the front. That's actually brilliant. I actually really like that. Plus, they may change points and upgrades in the future. So when that's on the back, you're not constantly looking at something that's wrong if anything gets errated in the
yeah,
future. And in terms of like the in-game mechanics, there's not really a lot I can comment on. I'm seeing a lot of people comment on the fact that seems to be a renewed focus on like capturing and holding tokens, similar to Marvel Crisis Protocol, which was a big criticism of X-Wing 2.5. And people are obviously on the lookout for that kind of stuff. That was a huge misstep by AMG, and they don't want to see it happen to other games. And Legion is that other game they got from the old company that people are like,
yeah,
no,
and it
don't
makes
ruin
them a
this
lot of
one.
money. So, yeah, I can't say that. Yeah, and Legion makes them a decent amount of money, is my understanding. I don't know the
It's
specific
possibly,
numbers.
and look, we don't have first-hand information on this, but by the
Right.
sounds of it, it might be Asmodee's best revenue in terms of a Star Wars game right now. Okay, this is pure speculation. Just Harry Nick did not say this. He did not say this as an absolute fact. It might be keeping AMG afloat right now. That is a possibility. And when you sort of look at the amount of work they've put into it,
Yeah.
and they're talking, Will Schick kept repeating the phrase, support for the next 5-10 years. Like they want to ride this all the way as far as they can. And I don't mean that in a cynical way, because I don't think all these changes are bad or whatever. I don't think they're going to AMGify it and ruin everything. But yeah, looking at some of those early concerns, I think some of it is overblown. I think
Mhm.
there's some knee jerk reaction going on. I will say, as someone who has no interest in giving AMG the benefit of the doubt right now, given what's happened over the past month, I actually think it looks okay. And I actually think some of these changes look fantastic. Oh, and the new hard plastic models, what they've revealed looks incredible. I
Yeah.
mean, it's AMG. That's what they're good at. But like
Yeah, for
those
sure.
Rebel Heroes box, yeah.
Yeah, and Legion, X-wing Armada are three examples of they all have their own competitive communities, and I think Atomic Mass Games has always kind of appealed to this more casual skirmishy vibe.
Yeah, big time.
And so they're and so I think I definitely don't think it's fair to say flat out that they don't like competitive gaming, but I don't think it's their favorite thing, if that makes sense. Like
I don't think it
I
appeals
think
to
they
the
want
staff
to.
members at IMG. That's the impression I get. And I just want to say, I don't think that beer and pretzel gaming is a bad thing. In actual fact, I love beer and pretzel games. I play those way more than competitive games. It's just when the games already have a foundation of competitive players and shifting it in that direction, causes the game to become disengaged with those players. That's when there's problems.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I definitely have seen a lot of people say they love the changes for Legion, and plenty of folks who are, I think, just so accustomed to, like a lot of X-wing players were accustomed to being able to have perfect information with your aces if you bid and all that stuff. Like you
Hmm.
get used to that and how you win with things, and you feel like that's being robbed from you. And I can understand having a more of an emotional reaction.
Yeah.
Time will tell.
A lot of this is the same kind of conversations we had going into 2.0. And I just, obviously everyone has their own opinions, but I think overall for the health of the game, the transition into second edition was fantastic. In terms of competitive health for the game, that's what I'm talking about
Yep.
specifically. I know it obviously hurt in terms of like their player base, and, we're learning more about that now. Oh, actually, on that note, AMG refusing to call Legion 2.0 Legion 2.0. Look, don't insult us like that. This is second edition Legion. If anyone from AMG is watching, if you think the problem is calling it second edition, you've learned all the wrong lessons. A second edition is not a bad thing. The issues with X Wing was the way it was implemented, the way it was rolled out. And ultimately, yes, every time you do a major rules update, it's going to have a backlash of some kind, even the good rules updates. And whether or not you call it second edition doesn't really make a difference at that point. Just it's Legion 2.0. It's fine. Just call it second edition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I honestly, I almost find it hilarious that, and if I would make that trade in a heartbeat, if it's like, hey, if you want to keep this game going with OP support, buy some more product for a new edition. I'd be like, yep.
It's
And
fine.
just,
Yeah.
just, how people were upset with the fact that a business was trying to be a business when it comes to, at least that's the way I look at it, when it comes to transition to 2.0, like buy conversion kits, buy, it's like, yes,
Yeah.
they're trying to make money. It's an
Absolutely.
expensive IP.
Look, it could have been done better, but it definitely was done better than a lot of other companies doing edition updates. I don't want to rag on GW. No, actually, I do want to rag on GW because
Here it comes.
I don't talk about their games for a reason. But their adherence to doing an edition update for Warhammer 40k every 3 years is a joke. Do edition updates when the game requires it, not because you're on a 3-year cycle and require everyone to buy multiple $50 books. And the only way to know it's happening in the competitive scene is essentially to buy every single book, because if you don't know the mechanics your opponents has, I really hate that approach. My biggest criticism of FFG in second edition was just the raw amount of cardboard we had to get. The fact that every pilot has this unique ship token, and and the bulk of the conversion kits. It's not a big criticism because ultimately I felt like it was a pretty low buy-in, but it wasn't perfect. Like I would have loved to have seen continued product support for the packs that already existed, but just hey, tell the factories to put a different pack of cards in. Let's it
Mhm.
had to be smoother than it was. And to AMG's credit, it looks like this transition, if we do think of this as a second edition, it's actually going to be potentially better than what happened with X Wing. AMG is sort of, open to print and play. They're basically saying everything is still compatible. These are really good early signs of transitioning into a second edition. The fact that you can just go and print off the new cards, the fact that you can just print off PDFs of what you need. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, to be fair, when you don't
mm,
have the product to sell and to replace it, I don't know what the alternative is right now, right? Like,
that's a good point. I mean, they could just print off everything and put it in a pack, but um,
yeah, which I think
that
they said they're doing later on,
yeah, we'll see what
right?
that looks like. I would imagine it's just going to be a pack with the new objective deck and like the board that you select
Hmm.
objectives on. I don't think it's going to be a pack with all the unit cards and that kind of stuff. I think that would be a mistake. Yeah, I just think trying to get the resources for every individual unit is what FFG tried to do. And granted, X-Wing has a lot more physical stuff you needed to put in that pack, but it was a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I have tons of stuff. I get it.
And it means that they can print the new version of these units and still sell the old ones at the same time. So it's not like FFG where they cut the entire range and then slowly drip fed out new products. They're just swapping them out one by one and keeping the new stuff in print. At least I'm pretty sure that's what's going on. If that's the case, that's fantastic. It's going to look
Sure.
messy because you'll have old style cards and new style cards next to each other. Totally respect that that's not ideal, but I think it's more ideal than other situations where you just suddenly invalidate a whole bunch of product that people have bought. That's a feel bad moment that I think it looks like they've avoided quite well. So yeah, I'm a fan of that.
Yeah, and also there, if the idea, I think it's fair for me to at least to assume. I'm not going to say everyone should, but that they're not doing very well right now. There's too many signs to suggest that they're not doing very well right now
Hmm.
for me, and so they probably can't even really justify or afford to be churning out physical product the same way, like with cards and just like adding more to the assembly line than what's already being planned for them.
Hmm.
It seems like an investment that isn't even worth taking, even if it is, it ends up being practical and logical, like you're saying, and that's a win-win for them,
It's all fairly
which
safe
is rare
product.
for a business.
I mean, they are. It looks like they are churning out, hard plastic models, but that's what they always do. They've obviously got a
Right.
good streamline assembly line for that, and
Not painted, not assembled either, which is
n-
the way that
no,
they.
let's not get into that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. No, but I'm just throwing out that it's easier to manufacture when that's the
oh yeah,
case,
yeah,
than
yeah,
like
big time.
X-Wing.
They're
Is
just
what I was
you're
saying. Yep.
designing the molds, you're sending them to the factory. There's obviously
Yep.
a good cycle with that. And I'm not usually that critical of companies' profit margins because I just don't know the inner workings of the companies. But if you have a look at the per cost of their hard plastic minis, like I play Marvel, for example, awesome game, love it. But the per cost price of buying in it's a bit high. I feel like again, speculation. Nick doesn't know this for sure. He's speculating. Okay, okay. I know. I see your comments.
He's for the people listening. He is pointing to you.
I
For the
worry
people
that
listening.
AMG relies on a profit margin that's unrealistic or unsustainable with their hard plastic stuff. I don't know that for sure, but it certainly looks like it from the outset.
If you guys want to get an idea of how expensive it is to have the Star Wars license and sell product with the Star Wars IP, look at
Mm.
Lego for as an example. As to their Lego City sets with the same amount of pieces in this Lego Star Wars set, and why
Very,
is this one
very
one
good
hundred fifty
example.
dollars
Yeah,
more than the other one? Yeah,
big time, big time.
it's they set high goals because they have a lot of pressure, and their floor is very high,
Mm.
ceiling is low. But you know what,
Big
Nick?
time.
Let's talk about you a little bit. I'm putting you on the spot. You're in the spotlight now. Yeah, exactly. How did you get into X-Wing, and then what led you to deciding to be like a content creator?
Okay, so X-Wing, getting to X-Wing. So it's the first tabletop game I've gotten into, if you don't count trading card games. Actually, that's not true. So when I was a teenager, I played Lord of the Rings, both the card game by Decipher and the mini game by Games Workshop. Both great games, by the way. RIP Decipher. Yeah, I sort of got into that with a mate, and it's really about the community, I find. And I think a lot of people agree with this. Once you find that community that you gel with, it just makes getting into this kind of stuff so much easier. It's super easy with computer games. Just log on to Steam, just play some multiplayer games online. You find people without even trying. What got me into X Wing specifically, the first tabletop game I got into seriously and actually got into competitively, was a mate of mine who we just go and hang out with once a week, play computer games, play card games, whatever. And I rock up there one day, and he has all these little Star Wars ships on his kitchen table, and there was like 5 or 6 of us there. And also shout out to FFG, that original How to Play X-wing video,
Yeah.
one of the best videos on YouTube. So me and this other guy sat on his couch, watched this 7-minute video. We're like, that game is obviously awesome. We walked over to the kitchen table, we played it. We got all the rules wrong, but my God, what an experience. One of the strengths of X-Wing, I've always said, is how fun it is on both ends of the spectrum and how fun it is whether you're winning or losing. There's not a lot of games I can say that about. certainly none to the extent of X-Wing. I think it's the best from that point of view. And that's how I got into it. I sort of, looked at playing at local stores. I wasn't really into that scene, so I'm like, oh, this shy ADHD guy, complete introvert, walking like, oh hi, do you have X-Wing tournaments? And like, just the response was super friendly. I ended up going to a store tournament with a janky dual fire spray list and just having so much fun, and sort of the rest is history. Just the community positivity kind of kept pushing me forward. I remember early on, I'd only been playing for a couple of months, and one of like the pro players was like, "Hey, Nick, you're coming to the nationals in a few months' time." I'm like, "I've just started playing." It's like, "Nah, don't worry, just come. It's awesome." And I did, and it was. It's just it was so easy getting into X-Wing. Very, very, very positive.
That video, you bring up memories like that. I'm a video producer by trade, like that's my job, and I went to animation school, and I just everything about that video is awesome. Like those are the kinds of videos that would have been like a dream to be able to be involved in making, because
Mm.
we'd be so lucky to get something like that nowadays.
I tried doing something similar when second edition came out. I made a short series of videos. I actually, due to some life events, didn't end up finishing that series. But I remember like my basics video, just like the rough basics of how to play 2.0, is a half-hour long video. And I look at it. I've actually rewatched it recently just to see how relevant it is. If you want to play Legacy, by the way, it's basically still relevant. Pretty cool. But I look at it now and think, I don't even know how I can cut this down. I don't know how they did it. So good.
Yeah, I remember that series of videos. You did those, and I know like Hexile GSP also for the tabletop simulator side made videos to help players, and I really appreciate that you and those guys you put those together.
Mm.
Those are invaluable resources, and it's nice that you could still go back and revisit them, that they haven't aged out into being obsolete, right? They still have some relevancy, which alludes to what you were saying with switching over.
I don't want to come across as pompous, but it's the kind of videos that I would want to see. That's why I made them. I'm probably going to look at doing something similar if if the XWA does have, okay, this is the rule set we're moving forward with. We're borrowing this from here, this from here. I might start doing that again because it's just an amazing resource. And now more than ever, it's about the community. This is where we get our information from now. So let's embrace that.
No, absolutely. Let's see. How did Alessari Justin get involved? You guys are very close. I'm just curious about the background of your relationship.
So we're mates from high school. Yeah, we went to a different high school. No, no, no. Sorry, he went to the high school down the road. Um, I became mates with him and other people from that sort of local area in university of all places. So I drove half an hour in the opposite direction and met all these people who sort of went to the schools around my. Very weird. But yeah, just a group of us got involved. We were all involved. This group of three of us with recording on that original channel, doing let's plays. Justin was involved with that, and when I started making my side channel, and talking about stuff, he sort of just was really enthusiastic about being involved. I never even thought of that. Not that I, specifically wanted to push him out. I didn't want to go, no, no, no. This is my special thing. But when he showed enthusiasm, and early on in that channel, we were recording Magic videos, and he actually got me into Magic originally, so that was a no brainer. Bring him on for that. Those didn't work out, and now that I have a much better understanding of Magic, I can see why. But we were young and naive. But basically, through the content I was making, he's like, I have to play X-Wing. This looks incredible. And I said to him, hey, you should play X-Wing. It's incredible. And he looked. I think he like opened up like a product listing for our local game shop, and he just saw the Decimator. I'm like, I have to own that ship. Yeah, yeah, it's pretty good. And he did. And then we did an unboxing on the channel for the Decimator, and then he just sort of got more and more involved and more enthusiastic. And yeah, it's just it was very natural, even though we haven't had him on the channel for quite a while. By the way, the video that's either just coming out before or after this video will have Justin on it, by the way. We still hang out all the time. We play Dungeons and Dragons. Love D&D. Awesome game. If you ever
Yeah.
thought about giving it a go, seriously give it a go. Or tabletop RPGs in general. I'm not just going to say Dungeons and Dragons. That's a branded thing. They're all great. Sorry, ADHD, off train of thought. Right, Justin.
Oh,
Yes,
that's okay.
um,
Yes.
indeed. Yeah. So yeah, we've just been friends, and it was such a natural fit having him on the channel, and yeah, he'll continue to be on the channel. We're chatting about, because we don't just have like company released information on product. Nick and Justin, let's sit down and talk about it. We don't have that anymore. So now we're actually talking and critically thinking about how to move forward and stuff. And we've got some good ideas. So he'll keep appearing on the
Yeah.
channel for the time being, and we'll work out
I
how that
I
works.
recently went down the Harry Nick rabbit hole and was watching your video most recently talking about the just the recent news, and then I kind of just kept like, YouTube has a next play button, like just plays the next video, what it recommends to
Mm.
you or whatever. And I got to when you and Justin were talking about 2.5, and like when it had first just come out, and it's just like, you guys have a really good casual, the dynamic that you guys have, it's cool because I feel like it's, with sports, you have someone who's the play by play and you have the color commentator. Have you heard of that reference before? You're more the play by play. You kind of lead with the information,
Dude,
and I feel
I'm
like
from Melbourne.
Justin.
We're the sports capital of Australia.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah,
worry, we
yeah,
know all
yeah,
about
yeah,
this.
yeah. Not to, yeah, mansplaining over here, but yeah, I just felt like you guys had that dynamic, and Justin would chime in with things that he noticed, and you would lead with a lot of the information and just kind of leading the video. And
Yeah.
I feel like he was definitely kind of became a part of your quote unquote like brand, and just in terms of making appearances, and it always
Oh
felt
yeah.
very, very, very friendly and casual. And I think that's important, especially if you guys are actually, you're actually friends outside of the videos that you make, and
Oh
maintaining
yeah.
that friendship is so
I,
important.
I couldn't do it if we weren't friends. Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
recently learning that Adam Savage and Jamie Hyneman from MythBusters were never friends. It's like, oh wow, you guys are really professional. I could
Yeah.
never do that.
It's a
But no, like,
bummer hearing about stuff like that.
oh, it's not a bad thing. I mean, so Adam is a big YouTuber. This is a completely separate topic, but it was just always a professional relationship. They don't see it as a bad
Mhm.
thing. It's just just how they engage with it. And yeah, talking about Justin again, he engages with the game in a very different way that I do, and I've always, I hate this sounds like a dirty corporate thing to say, but I've always seen the value in that from a content creation point of view. But uh, the way I've always tried to engage with the game, I've always tried to be diplomatic about the way I discuss things. I don't poo-poo certain people's opinions and views in the game, and I try to see things from different perspectives. So having Justin there has always been great for that reason.
For sure. Um, in terms of, how did you feel like you kind of found your niche with the types of videos that you guys make, or that you make? Um,
Uh,
was it a lot of experimenting, or did you just kind of have a goal from the get go? I want to make videos like this.
well, I mean, obviously, when I started out, I was making Let's Play videos, and I think I was just trying to make videos like the Let's Players that I watched and just doing a worse job. Um, and when I was sort of like interested in making videos for myself, um, I didn't make the site. I didn't. Sorry, when I say site channel, I mean this channel. Sorry, this is your channel. I mean Harry Nick, the channel we're talking about.
Yes,
Um,
yes, the other Nick,
I,
the more
I
hairy
um
Nick.
I made that just to have that outlet for videos I wanted to make, and then that ended up exploding. Uh, Basically, there were people doing discussion pieces on X-wing. Back then, I remember probably the big one was Sling Paint, Berto and Nim. If you didn't play X-wing during first edition, you won't know who that is. But just a couple of guys chatting about X-wing. It was great, and I remember watching some of their stuff, and it was all. I don't want to say like fairly on the surface, but they didn't. I remember thinking one day, this isn't as analytical as I want it to be, so I made that. That's just how I sort of looked at it. Because there were certain talking points, and I'm just trying to remember like specific examples. Um, yeah. So first video I made was on the Scum Ace Pack, the patch for Scum in first edition, with the Star Viper and the Curax, and there were certain sort of comparisons being made to other ships within the game, and people were talking about that sort of like, oh yeah, this sort of like lands in this kind of points. I'm like, no, I want numbers on the screen. I want like text coming up with explanations and stuff. So I did that, and I kept doing that, and people seem to like that.
It's more work, right? It's more tedious, but it does look good. You feel good
Oh,
when you put a little bit more effort into
again, it's just the
putting stuff.
content I wanted to see, and I'm going to keep harping on this. If you want to get into YouTube, make the content that you want to see, and it's a certain way my brain works, but I like learning. I like improving a process whenever I'm learning how to do something. So learning video editing, having information on the screen, it was daunting that first time because I didn't know what I was doing, but I just like, well, okay, look up on YouTube. How do I do this? How do I edit this kind of thing? How do I put this kind of thing into my edit? And I learned it bit by bit. And every time you do something like that, you know how to do it. You move forward. Never stop learning. It's such a great philosophy to approach anything in life.
Yeah, you got to be willing to learn. Ask questions. Be willing to learn. And
Mm,
I mean, it's just great advice when it comes to making,
everything.
putting together YouTube videos.
Mm,
Everything though, right? But I mean,
yeah.
I always thought of it as like, I think most people fall into the trap of what do people want to see, and then you start to fall into this routine that feels like a chore, and you're not enjoying it, and it leads to burnout and
Yeah.
mental health issues and
Yes.
everything, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure to put on
Yeah.
yourself when you feel like you're needing to cater to an ever evolving and ambiguous market. It's not the way to go.
The
It's
X-wing
long term
zeitgeist.
sustainability. Yeah. Yeah. Here you guys can you I mean, here we are. We're providing just life advice and just kidding, but it's helpful, very helpful, and it's very wise in a way for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, of course. More about you. You are of course in Australia. You said the Melbourne area, right?
Mhm.
So, what has X-wing traditionally been like in your area or in Australia? If you kind of have a good gauge on the greater country as a whole, and what has it been like now in the last year or so?
Okay, in the last year or so, basically there has been no Melbourne official play scene. I think, sort of mid to late last year, people just sort of dropped off entirely.
It's
The
a shame.
transition to 2.5 basically killed it for us, which sucks. Oh, you know what? Tell you what, I'm going to announce something on your channel right now. I am looking to sort of build a community effort within Melbourne. So if anyone here from Melbourne is watching, jump on my Discord or just say hi or whatever. We want to try and actually sort of build something here, whatever that ends up looking like, whatever. But I'm just keen to play in person X Wing. I've already sort of chatted to a few people who are doing some local legacy stuff, and we want to try and establish something. In terms of the rest of the country, there's still a solid scene going on in New South Wales, which is the state just above us, and also a little bit in Queensland as well. So New South Wales has always been like the biggest heart of the X-wing community. It's because of the efforts in people in New South Wales, particularly Onyx Squadron, that group, that we originally got a system open from FFG. They've been the big ones to advocate with and on behalf of the local supplier to get good organized play. And I know there are probably people outside Onyx Squadron as well. I'm not going to try and remember names. I'm terrible at that, and I will forget people.
Yeah, like I think the Gundarks, right? Fearless Gundarks, Navi.
Yes. Oh, yes. I was going to say
That
Nobby. Nobby is the other one. He's
yeah.
actually based in Queensland, so he's not in New South Wales either. But yeah, big shout out to all of those people involved with that kind of stuff. I've never been involved with any kind of big push for official play. That might change in the future. I'll see how I go with that. But
Mhm.
it's just never been my jam, kind of thing.
So, with that said, then, well, I guess I have two questions. One is
Mhm.
when you alluded to it already a little bit, but when the game did transition to 2.5, was just the overall vibe was not very good, would you say, in Australia? Especially Melbourne, it sounds like, but like, what about like New South Wales and stuff? It sound they had enough people to keep going,
Uh,
but what
yes.
was the vibe?
Yeah. There certainly is a group of individuals I can think of that transitioned away, and also a lot of those people ended up sort of moving into other AMG games anyway, like started getting more heavily into Legion, Shatterpoint, MCP. Unfortunately, I have no problem with AMG making a good portfolio of great games, but unfortunately, they do have a habit of cannibalizing each other, especially in smaller communities. Basically, if I go down to my local shop, I have to play Shatterpoint. That's the only option I have in terms of like getting consistent games with people, and that's kind of annoying to me.
That's interesting. I can't even find a store here that anywhere anyone plays Shatterpoint.
Well, that's the thing. But if I lived half an hour in that direction, it'd be MCP. This is the fundamental problem we have. Yeah, it's just in a community where there's only like a group of 10 or less players that go to a store regularly, we're just going to have those fundamental issues. And we just keep jumping between games. And I have sort of been thinking about looking at Shatterpoint, but I'm also aware of the fact that I could get into it and, take the million years I take to paint models. And by the time I do that, they might jump into another game. And I'm just like, okay, that doesn't sound very appealing.
Shatterpoint, it seems, has been a bit of a struggle for them, just kind of getting it to where they want it to be.
Oh, yeah. And look, if I were to ever engage with the game, I would basically look at it, the price point and the models and go, okay, I know I'm getting really cool minis, but that's my only guarantee I have. And I'm going to buy a product based on that knowledge. Like the price of the core box is actually really good. If you just want that set of minis, you go ahead, because that is a great experience getting to paint and, learning how to paint that group of minis for that price is fantastic. Hey, there's a game attached. Awesome. But beyond that, yeah, I'm cautious.
Hmm.
Actually, due to the recent announcement with Legion, especially with some of the new stuff they're bringing out, I'm like, I'm just going to play that. I've already got a bunch of Legion stuff. If they're going to make hard plastic as nice as their Shatterpoint stuff, I'd rather just buy the Legion stuff instead.
Sure.
Just keep it all in one
Yeah.
game. Mm, big time.
Absolutely. Were there any store champs? Like, how was the store champ scene with for worlds invites and stuff? Like, were there enough store champs for people to be able to really compete for getting a worlds invite? Or
Are we talking in the last couple of years or over the entire time I played
what?
X Wing?
Yeah. Sorry. Let me be
Because it's
specific.
changed.
The AMG season from last season.
Within the last year, I think there was 2023 store champs.
Mhm.
Nothing 2024.
Yeah.
Basically, when a game gets small enough, for example, this store that I'm talking about, where most of the crowd's playing Shatterpoint, they do Legion store champs, because it's a big enough event that the people playing it as a side game still come along, and people from around the state still come to play store champs. So they can justify doing that, just not the regular events.
Sure.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, so that's kind of the pattern.
Yeah. I mean,
If
2024 store champs haven't we had a store champ who's extended just for fun, and we had 14 people show up, and that was more than I thought we would get. So I just
yeah,
there aren't store champs right now.
I remember when like regular tournaments, 14 would be like the average number. I'm depressing myself
No.
now. I shouldn't think about that.
Oh no, well, I'll join you in that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about just the X-Wing community, because now the X-Wing community is basically put on notice and taking up ownership, or really, when I say ownership, I mean responsibility for whatever we get moving forward with Legacy, and with, of course, the X-Wing Alliance that I'm associated with. And so, how do you feel about, yeah, what game, system or rule sets are you most attracted to, and how do you feel about community support moving forward?
Nick, I'll be honest, I have like 5 videos in mind I want to make just to try and explain this. So I want to say that I have played and enjoyed the 3 major rule sets, 1, 2, and 2.5. If So first of all, let's just rule out 1. I don't think we're ever looking at a serious return to 1 in any kind of official capacity. That's not a slight on 1, first edition. It's an amazing rule set, and I encourage people to engage with it casually. If you can fire up local tournaments because you have enough interest, great. But that's, yeah, awesome game. But 2 is just the refined version of 1. So let's just rule that out for the time being. So really, the discussion is the rules of 2 versus 2.5. If Nick was just going to get his way, we'd just roll back to 2. And I think I said as much right after the announcement. I think that statement was a little bit flippant, because now that I've actually spoken about it and engaged with the community, I think it's way more nuanced than that.
Hmm.
There is one very specific thing with 2 that I would love to see return, and that is the 200 point system. Points and ships on the same spectrum of points. Like, let's that yeah, I miss it. I miss it so much in competitive X-Wing. That was the big thing. But beyond that, I I'm actually pretty cool with either rule set. I guess the other thing is missions as well, but the
Sure.
point structure and the missions and scoring kind of go hand in hand anyway. So I don't think we're going to have 200 points in missions. I don't. I mean, XWA, you guys might think of some kind of way to make that work, but I can't see that happening. For example, uh, if you look at why the 20-point system exists and how it relates to MCP specifically, the elephant in the room is, of course, they sort of pushed it in that kind of design direction. It makes a lot of sense. I just think that point system and that scoring system works way better in MCP, and I think it was kind of tacked on to X-Wing.
It's very limiting in X-Wing
Big
for
time.
sure.
So yeah, 200 points in dogfights. That's my preferred way of playing. Look, beyond
Yeah.
that, the way bumping and asteroids work, I prefer the older rules with bumping from a flavor perspective. But at the same time, the way AMG changed it so if you bump a friendly ship, you can take damage, I actually really like that. I was really critical of Road when they first announced it, and then I played it, and I actually really like Road.
Yeah,
it's
road is the least of my concerns these
it's
days when I play X-Wing. Yeah.
exactly. And I thought it would be the biggest concern when I first looked at 2.5 and I read through those. I'm like, oh, this right here adds way too much complexity. No, it's just
Mhm.
really intuitive and easy to do. I'm just shocked by that. I think maybe the rule might need some refining. People are talking about random order. Was it random order before dials? I think in
It still
terms
gives you
of
too much information, I think, is tough with that one, right? That's
yeah,
why they like road as it is.
I know, but at the same time, you're not just invalidating the first player thing for an entire game, which is the big problem with the bid system.
Mhm.
We could have a nuanced discussion on this for ages,
Yeah,
but
yeah, of course.
I do like choosing my maneuvers with more information. It makes the game feel a little bit more like chess in terms of like working and strategizing and try to predict the way your opponent works. I like that side of things. And I will say, I loved the bid system because it was really crunchy. It was really sort of relay. It was a great thing for us competitive players to get into and sort of engage with and go, oh, how much of a bid do we need? That kind of thing. But I totally get the negative play aspect of that. And the way and people have been talking about this ad nauseum at this point, and I get it. So you know what? If it appeals to more people, I'm happy to throw away something that I don't love. But again, if it were up to Nick, let's just play 2.0.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any concerns with like the Legacy Project and X-Wing Alliance projects, like moving forward with keeping the game going? Is there anything that naturally stands out to you, like, oh, this, what are maybe some things that you
I
think
think
about would be obstacles?
the key thing with the XWA, and look, you guys are already doing this, so you've allayed a lot of concern simply by the fact that you're communicating with the community. I think long term, what we want to see from you guys is uh, making sure that the community is being listened to. And there are a lot of voices within the community. I see them in my comment section all the time. The game has to be done this way, or I'm out. Really
Ultimatums, yeah.
unhelpful, completely unhelpful. If you are thinking that way, you are priming yourself for disappointment. B, let's try and be a bit more open minded and nuanced about this because, as much as we might not like 2.5, guess what? All the new players that joined the game in the last 2 years only know 2.5, and that's okay. That's completely okay. If there's going to be any kind of rollback in terms of like the rules, and obviously there's already going to be rollback in terms of the philosophy and approach to the game because the X-Wing Alliance doesn't want to make it like Marvel Crisis Protocol. I
Yeah.
I'm not even going to ask you that. There's no point me asking you that. There's not a separate game that the X-Wing Alliance is working on that they're trying to sort of make it
Yeah.
work like.
And we're
They
also
want
not going to make it 2.0 verbatim because the 2.0
oh
legacy
yeah.
project exists already. So I don't know why people are thinking XWA would do that as
Well,
well.
that's the whole. Well, we
No.
didn't know early on, and the cool
Hmm.
thing is we've had these announcements from the XWA, and also the guys at Legacy have also announced, "Hey, look, we've been changed to the XWA. We want to keep
Yeah.
them as separate projects and that kind of thing." I think the only concern that I personally have from that is like, oh, does that mean that you're definitely not using old rule sets? Like again, talking about those very specific things that we like, but
Sure.
I don't want to make that assumption. I'd rather wait until you guys actually announce something before.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, I can confidently tell you this. I've already kind of mentioned it on some other channels that have been on recently. We've been talking at nauseum about a 40-point structure, a 200-point list building structure. We all
Yeah,
kind of
good.
agree that 20-point list building, as it stands right now, is very problematic. The
Yeah,
variety, the depth of list building and choices that you have, or the lack of, are
yeah.
bad. And so the hot fix we're making, we're gonna do an initial rollout of a 20-point meta change that changes points and upgrades and
Oh,
slots,
yeah, yeah.
and then look to the future. That's another thing where I think people are
Mm.
getting a little tossed up, is like, well, why are you even bothering with 20 points right now? It's like, well, because we have to roll this out, we gotta change that first.
Don't change the rules before you rebalance the game. Rebalance the game first. Like I am a huge advocate of doing it the way, because apart from anything else, we've needed a rules, a points update for 2.5 that AMG have sort of just refused to engage with. Yeah.
Do you remember how weird it was that, like, right before Worlds, they, like, gave us, like, a really strange points update that was, like, 4 or 5 things that they changed, like Han, like, just very random, and it's like, "Hey, we're gonna, like, do this, like, little soft update," and everyone's like, "Oh, there'll be a bigger update in May or June," and then just, like, nothing ever happened. It was really bizarre. I don't know why that happened, but they did it.
I'll be honest,
Um,
man. I was a bit tapped out at that point, and I didn't know that that
okay.
happened. But now that you're telling me that, it's like, yeah, that tracks.
Yeah, and they didn't, everybody, because based on which it was a fool. I was foolish to think this way, but based on how they were releasing the previous scenario packs, they would
Mm,
just update points for what the costs were for the items in the scenario packs. And so when Battle Over Endor came out,
mm.
people are like, there's going to be I think there might be a points change. And I'm over here like, that's foolish. There's no chance that they would give us a points update for anything but the Battle Over Endor stuff. Look at Yavin, look at Siege of Coruscant. And then they kind of half proved me wrong, because they're like, we'll change like 5 things and Battle Over Endor stuff. And it was right before Worlds. It was a few weeks out. And the whole community was like, well, that's cool, but also, why did they do this? It was right before Worlds. And is there going to be another points update? There has to be, because they only changed a few things, and then here we are. They never did it. It was just bizarre, to say the least.
It,
We won't be
yeah.
doing that as the XWA. We'll have a
Oh,
rotation of points that makes sense.
I wasn't even going to ask you that. Don't worry about that, man. But all I
Yeah.
can say is it tracks. And okay, again, I want to try and avoid the negativity and everything. But I was just chatting to this off camera with Justin the other day, and every time we get confused by something, we just fall back on they just didn't allocate the resources. I hate the phrase they didn't care, because it's they're a company. They make business decisions. It's not about whether they care or not. But it's like they just didn't put the effort in. I just keep coming back to that point over and over again. And it just, when you appreciate everything together, don't waste brain power trying to understand the processes. It's not worth it for it's not an interesting discussion. It's not worth it for your mental health. Let's just move forward.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mm.
I've been in a position where we've all been in positions where we've been set up to fail, and we extensively on our podcast have talked about how AMG they have been set up to fail in a lot of ways, and
Mm.
Asmodee literally by Embracer as well. So we don't
Yeah.
need to obviously go through that, but it's obvious that there's a lot of nuance as to how we've gotten here. And on the front
Mm.
end, it's just the communication was always in the QA wasn't there. I have
Oh,
in
for
my
sure.
hands a bunch of these Soon tier cards. I got some extras from Worlds to
Mm.
give away before I realized they were misprinted on the back.
Oh,
So it's just
really?
like, you can't win.
It's really funny because I keep seeing all these YouTube videos of people who obviously don't play X-Wing or vicariously play it, talking about things like, "Oh, it was always going to fail because it was an IP-based game." I'm like, dude, that is like the 20th thing down the list that we that we have to worry about. Now, the fact that X-Wing is an IP-based game exacerbates some issues, certainly, but it is not what killed it. Like,
No,
not
no,
even not
absolutely.
even close.
Not even
Mm,
close. Absolutely. Yeah, we could squash that one.
yeah, pretty
Now,
much.
this is an important kind of segment here that I want to get into, as it's affected you, it's affected me, it affects a lot of content creators and people who are just very passionate about what they do and devote a
Mm,
lot of time and resources into doing what they do.
mhm.
And as two fellow content creators named Nick, who share the same first name, why do you feel it's important to be aware of your mental health when making content?
You just alluded to it. It's really interesting, specifically surrounding the awareness of ADHD. It's funny because it came about. largely due to TikTok. It's sort of what everyone theorizes was the main thing that brought awareness to it, because TikTok is it's this bizarre platform. I'm not part of this, by the way. I know about it because someone else that uses that, and it just it punches out little bits of information at such rapid pace, and it appeals to a certain kind of person, and because that sort of message and people sort of like saying, oh, do you think like this and this, or maybe you should look into an ADHD diagnosis, and that just cut through. Looking at it now, the renewed awareness in this that's happened, it's crazy that it didn't happen sooner, but I also kind of understand how the message had to go out there in a certain unique way, and it just resonates with content creators. I don't like to be the kind of person that diagnoses people. I think that's a little bit rude. At the same time, holy hell, I can see how like the vast majority of content creators are either ADHD or ADHD adjacent. It just goes hand in hand with the way they think and engage with their stuff. Not just because of hyperfixation, but obviously that's a big part of it. And yeah, sort of being open about that and the fact that I got my own diagnosis has been just this very positive thing. And I just we should talk about it, because this
Yeah.
stuff was not we weren't aware of this stuff for so long because of the stigma, because people weren't just talking about it openly. And I think it's really cool, like seeing, especially like younger and younger generations. Sorry, I felt really old saying that. um, but just seeing like it seems like every generation, there's like all these barriers that just go down. And one of the big things, especially with like Gen Z and to a lesser extent millennials and going up the chain, just this acceptance of talking about neurodivergence. It's great. Like it's only a positive thing talking about it, and I think we should continue to do so.
Yeah, very well said. I remember watching a video you talked about, hey, I'm back. A lot of things have happened. I know I've been away for a bit, and you mentioned your diagnosis. How do you feel? How was having dealing with ADHD affecting you, and how has receiving that diagnosis kind of pushed you into this new kind of part of your life and the way you feel about yourself?
In terms of the way it affects everything in your life, it's the fundamental thing, which sort of encapsulates that kind of personality, is having a big enthusiasm to start a project but not end it. Okay, if anyone just heard that and they thought, "Oh, that's me," and you haven't looked into any neurodivergent diagnosis, please do yourself a favor and talk to your doctor about this kind of stuff. It's not always cheap. I I don't know how it works in America, but even in Australia, like we're still not caught up with that kind of stuff. But it's always worth pursuing. Actually, on the financial side of things, yes, it costs money to get diagnosed, but it also costs you a lot of money not to get diagnosed because of your everyday habits. Just be aware of that as well. I keep doing this. What was the question?
No, I mean,
We're literally
honestly, it's
talking
very
about it
it's
right
very
now.
timely. Yeah, yeah, here we are. Um,
Yeah.
no, just how did you? So you said it affects every part of your life. With you and your channel, like how is that? How did that have a wedge in your plans and in
Oh,
your life leading up to your
okay.
diagnosis, and how you feel
So
now after receiving it?
the way I think about it in terms of the way I've made content, like trying to make like weekly content and like recurring shows, I realize now is a very neurotypical way of making content, because if you lose interest in something as someone with ADHD, particularly like the inattentive internal ADHD, that's an oversimplification, but that's kind of the way we categorize these things. It's very difficult to engage with something once your mind has latched off of it, and it's like it's four times as much work trying to re-engage with it. And there were moments, specifically like around the lead up to 2.5, where I felt like that. Like I'm not hyper fixating on this, so it's really hard to gather my thoughts and make stuff on this now. So with my approach to making content now is like I'm only interested in the three videos that are in front of me right now. I'm not ashamed of that. I think that's actually quite a good way of making content in hindsight, because you can be dynamic. And there's a word I'm thinking of. What's it? Agile is the word. You can agilely change your content and like adapt to what you want to do. The fact that we don't have this set in stone, set of articles put out by a company like this is the new stuff coming out next wing. The fact that the future is unknown actually makes me more excited because of my neurodivergence, and because of the positivity coming out. It's great, to be honest. The diagnosis has been fantastic because I'm so aware of the way my mind works now, and I can see like the latching on and latching off in terms of hyperfixation and losing interest. I can view it in real time, and medication helps with that as well. Again, talk to your
Sure.
doctor. I'm not telling anyone to
Yeah.
just go out and pursue that kind of thing without medical advice first. But it's like it's given my brain the mental tools to slow down and see what's happening. It's the negative of that is, oh my god, I didn't have, I wasn't doing this for 30 years of my life, and that sucks. But you know, glass half full. I'm dealing with it now, and that's awesome.
Yeah. Did you feel like a type of when you were struggling to stay latched on or focused on a
Mm.
project? Did you feel like were you beating yourself up like, oh man, am I like what's wrong with me? Am I being lazy? Why am I not staying on this? Like how are you did you have an unhealthy relationship with
No,
yourself because of
I've
the
always had a
way?
pretty positive relationship with myself. Yeah, for a while now. I don't think that's the way I thought about it. Like, it got to a point where I knew I just couldn't force myself to do it. I didn't understand why it
Mhm.
was.
So the break that you chose to take was kind of something that was proactive in a
Oh,
way,
dude, I
right? Would
didn't
you
choose to
say?
take a break. That was going day to day, and then going, "Oh, what am I going to do with it?" And then just realizing, "Oh, I've just suddenly gone several months, and
Okay,
I've been
I see.
focusing on this part of my life, not this part of my life." It just sort of happened,
Mhm.
which is why in the video where I was talking about the diagnosis, I said, "Hey, look, it might happen again. Please don't take it personally." It doesn't mean I
Yeah.
suddenly hate doing this or hate the game. I've always really, the game is in X-wing, not the game is in life. I wasn't being metaphorical
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Uh,
Do you
yeah,
YouTubers, if you don't mind me just sorry, just quickly chiming in on
yeah, of
that
course.
topic, like YouTubers, there's this the grind and the schedule of having content coming out, promising people, which I could never do because I'll never take YouTube that seriously to be like, hey, every
Mm.
Monday, Tuesday, Friday, we're having a new video. Like, did you ever hold yourself to that? Or did you always kind of know better than to be like, let's not overpromise and put myself in a position where I'm gonna burn out really hard?
We definitely were trying to get. We did a video series called The Hanger Bay, where we just like read and discussed people's X-wing lists, which was great fun, by the way. Sort of like it gets your own theory crafting brain going, and again, that was easy because I was hyper fixating on that kind of stuff anyway. And it was a relatively, I hate saying the word easy because no video is easy to make, but relatively speaking, it was a less time consuming and less labor intensive way of making videos. So we had a schedule. Me and Justin would record that once a week, and that was fantastic. But it got to a point where, like, if I wasn't able to stay focused on stuff, it's like it felt like, oh, what, another week's rolled around again. I didn't even think about doing any other kind of content, and I felt like I was getting into a loop at stages where I was like, I didn't have time to think about any other kind of content. And that sucked. So there are certain YouTubers I watch now that do have a very strict schedule. Okay, great example. Jay from Eons of Battle. He's a mini painter. Talks about GW stuff, Legion, all this kind of stuff, and just like all these mini painting projects. Jay's output is, I can't understand how one person can do as much stuff as he does. But I look at what he does. I see his discussion pieces. I recently watched him on a podcast outside of that, and he's clearly a very positive dude. I really hope he's not hiding anything, but at the same time, it's like, okay, that person is able to engage with that content, and he's actually said openly, like, this is pretty much all I do, and I love doing it. Great. Don't set yourself to those standards. If you try and do that and you hate every minute of it, be aware of that and don't force
Mm,
yourself down that path. To keep things sustainable, you have to really be aware of how your mental health is being affected by what you do. So, yeah, on the question of regular content, it's up to every individual.
yeah, I was having this conversation last night about Patreon and just how it's the person I was talking to. She was struggling to maintain and sustain a hobby. She'd get really into something, research it a lot, and then it would come time to like do the thing, do the hobby, and she would lose interest. And we were talking about
Yes.
Patreon. I said, well, Patreon is interesting because you have the special type of supporters and who are financially supporting you, and so there's a bit more of an incentive to stay motivated to get things done because you're here they are you
Mhm.
know pledging financial support because if they like what you do, and so it's an extra way of type of motivation to just like keep myself honest. And she's like, oh, that's interesting. And I said, yeah, I mean, obviously sometimes that can be double edged where you have a lot of
Yeah,
there ends up being a lot of pressure on yourself. You're not in the best state of mind. You just aren't feeling the best version of yourself, and you have that looming, and that can be really hard. But at least right now, with how I'm feeling, it's a nice little nudge. It can be seen as both ways. I understand that it can be hard to have
there's
to
the
deal with
risk with
that.
that is if you want to do other kinds of content, you might feel pigeonholed into only doing what your patrons want you want to do. So yeah, again,
Hmm.
be aware of how this affects you and just move forward with that.
Yeah.
For me, Patreon just wasn't working, and I actually feel again, I'm not trying to undercut what you do,
No, that's
but
fine. What do you mean by not working? I'm just curious. You said that a couple of
oh,
times, just like
it
it just wasn't working. I'm
because the
curious.
people on that were supporting me to make X-wing content, and I
I see.
was interested in branching out into other things, and I felt like pressured to keep making X-wing content, and sort of stepping away from that and doing my own thing was really positive. Actually, just on no, before AMG made this announcement about X-wing, I was already going to come back and do stuff, but I wasn't going to make X-wing content. I'm still probably going to do that, but it just the interest just shifts like that, and
Yeah.
that's okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
more on that later. We'll see how that goes. I'm not going to make any promises.
Yeah, exactly. You're in this. I was gonna say you're kind of in this period where you have a bigger sandbox and you can kind of experiment and play with what you think is gonna work. Because
Hmm.
it's an unprecedented time in some ways, right? A lot of ways
Yeah, big
for
time.
content and the games that we're covering. Do you have any other like just any more general advice for people to try to avoid burnout in their respective gaming communities? Like I feel like we don't talk
Hmm.
enough about TOs, content creators, of course, like us, people who just do a little bit more for what they love. How would you say, what do you think are a couple of helpful tips if you had any?
I think
Again,
we've
not
just
not like take it as concrete advice that you should do this and have to do this, but just
no,
curious.
no, no, no. When it comes to anything related to neurodivergence and dealing with that, talk to a psychiatrist or a doctor. But I'm going to extrapolate on something because I was talking about like just be aware of how things are affecting you. One more thought I'll add to that is be aware of the bad actors in that space as well. One of the big reasons why I don't cover companies like GW is I find a lot of their consumer practices to be quite abhorrent. The big thing is like the way they limit product, create FOMO, and that kind of stuff. It's obviously, we could talk about so many different factors about why that's bad for consumers overall, but that preys on people who are neurodivergent. And I just want to encourage people, if you find yourself in that kind of situation where you're buying things because you feel like the company involved has created a sense of FOMO, or like you're engaging with things for any reason relating to like the way a company makes a game or any actor within that space. Again, don't be afraid to take a step back. Don't buy that $300 box if you know that this experience, if you know in your heart of hearts that you've been through this before and it sucked last time, don't do it again. Just think about this stuff critically. And one thing I'm always happy to say about FFG and AMG and the Star Wars games I talk about in general, we've never really badly gone down those kinds of paths. There are companies that I don't cover their games for this exact reason, for a lot of reasons, but let's not go back to that right now. Be aware about the way you engage with the game and the actors within that space affects you mentally, and do what's right for you, not what you think you have to do.
Yeah, and generally speaking, that having dealing with mental health issues or things that come up with your mental health is perfectly, not only is it perfectly reasonable, but it is okay. That's not an excuse to have to take
Mm,
care of yourself. So I've definitely felt very burnt out with just being in the middle of like I find that like tournaments can really, if I'm doing a lot with X Wing and then I put together a big event or something, it can the fatigue is, it's more fatigue than burnout, but it's okay to take a break.
mm.
People aren't, you're not beholden to people. Yeah. I
So,
do a little bit of everything, to be
I was going
honest.
to say, with tournament organizing, you make that commitment, and then you have to keep working at it for a long period of time. So you've
Hmm.
got to try and be cautious of that. Don't commit
Yeah.
yourself into something that you can't walk away from for X amount of weeks or months or whatever. Yeah, be
Yeah.
mindful.
And you're responsible for people's enjoyment and for the community
Yeah.
staying at a certain level. And
Yeah, absolutely.
that's a big responsibility for sure.
Indeed.
Now, Nick, before we wrap up here, is there anything else you wanted to talk about with maybe like the plans for the channel or goals or just kind of what people might be able to quote, I'm going to use, air quotes here, expect or hope to see maybe in the future of the Harry Nick YouTube channel?
In terms of video content, I'm not making any promises moving forward. One of the big things which I've already started doing, this is relating to the video I just recorded with Justin, we will sort of be going through the various rule sets that X-Wing has been through and talk about the pros and cons of that. The first video we're doing is on 1.0, and that's not meant to be like, hey, this is why 1.0 should be what we're doing now. We're not going back to 1.0. But it's a celebration of all this kind of stuff. It's trying to stay positive and that kind of stuff. Like, yes, obviously I'm not a big fan of 2.5, but I still want to talk about all those rules and the positive aspects that they've brought to the game and, how they may still be implemented. Like, there's everything in 2.5 actually could have a place. I'm going to say that equivocally now. It doesn't mean it has to be in the core competitive thing. That's all I say on that. I could keep unraveling thoughts on that, but I'm not going to. Another thing I've been working on, I'll give people a bit of a spoiler here. I haven't made a video for the last 3 weeks, but I have been working on some stuff. So one thing I really want to encourage the XWA to look at moving forward is being a bit more relaxed about game pieces, because holy hell has our collections gotten complicated. So on the shelf behind me, see if I can get my finger in the right spot. Yep. Those 3 shelves and there is all X-Wing ships. Those 3 tubs there are all game components. On the
Yeah.
shelves here are like stacks of cards and all this kind of stuff. I'm still
You need a
organizing.
whole system of shelving for it.
The good old IKEA Kallax. And one thing moving forward, I think we have to be a bit more lenient with the way we can use our game components moving forward. So I've actually been working on a few things, and I'm just going to show this quickly on the camera there. This is a generic ship template, and that's all you get to see for the time being. More on that in the
Ooh, ooh
future.
la la.
Subscribe to my channel and come to my Discord.
Yes, both of those things. I am a part of the. I am in the Harry Nick Discord, and I have been a subscribed for several years, and it's definitely a good time. The Discord channel is growing, and you have a very positive and engaged community, which is really, as someone who owns a Discord server myself, is really all you could ever hope for. People are
Yeah.
being nice to each other and are excited to talk about their favorite games and what they're doing with them, and that's
Big
what you
time.
want to see.
And it's a bit unfocused at the moment because I don't really know what I'm doing with the Discord. But the one sort of core thread with the Discord is I talk about like the content I want to make and that kind of stuff, and actually try to have an open discussion about everything. By the way, if you just come and hang out in the Discord, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Because I just blurt it all out. I just like hyperfixate and
It's like,
just
this is
type
what I'm
everything.
thinking, and bulleted, bullet
Yeah,
points. It's like, cool,
yeah,
yeah, let's
pretty
talk
much. Yeah,
about it. Absolutely,
it's
yeah. You
great
get to
fun.
see how the sauce is made in a way, yeah.
Yeah, big time,
Or is
big
what
time.
is the sausage is made, I guess. Yeah, no
That's
one
right.
says the sauce.
The sauce and the sausage. That's right.
But at all, exactly.
Well, so the
Is there
American
anything
equals
else before I?
sauce. Sorry.
You guys big sauce fans over there? What's
Oh
what's the
yeah,
what's the
yeah,
go-to
yeah.
sauce in Australia?
Oh, tomato sauce.
Yeah.
Do you guys call it ketchup, or is that something different? I don't know.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's the whole thing. Okay, fair
Well,
enough.
no, just in Chicago here, you were chastised for putting ketchup on your hot dog. It's like
Oh,
very,
it's a state to state thing. Okay,
it's a
actually, no,
Chicago specific. Yeah,
that's similar here in Australia. Not with sauces, but with other food products. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's good fun.
It's amazing how protective we are of our food cultures and
Of
how
just
a lot of it makes no
absolutely
sense.
pointless,
Just so
realities of
pointless.
life.
It's great. It's just great.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. I'm gonna roll through our intro real quick here, or outro rather. Thank you to Harry Nick for joining us and for being an awesome content creator for the game of X-Wing and beyond. It is great to have you back, Nick.
Thank you.
Please consider joining Nick's Discord. And of course, if you haven't already, you should be subscribing to his YouTube channel, as I have been for several years. We will include links to all of that pertinent information in our description. This episode is once again brought to you by Strata Strike. You can go to their Etsy page and buy some incredible gaming components and use coupon code 312 Squadron. It's capital S, all lowercase, QUADRON for 15% off the entire store, your purchase. Make sure you follow us on Twitch. You can catch our edited content on YouTube, like our Facebook page, yada, 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 and join our Discord to get in on the conversation. And thank you to our patrons ultimately, you are the biggest supporters that we have, and we really do appreciate all of the support you have given us. That's going to conclude this episode. My name is a less hairy Nick.
And I'm Hairy Nick. Thanks for joining us.
And thank you for listening and watching. It sounded weird saying the Hairy Nick rabbit hole. As soon as I said it, I was like,
the second you said that, I was like,
you made a face. I was like, phrasing.
Phrasing.
Well, I said rabbit hole at least. I mean,
hey, phrasing.